Okay guys, welcome back. This is going to be part 3, the final part of getting this valance ready and an epoxy primer and then 2K primer. Tomorrow I'll sand it before I paint it. I was going to use a DA to shape this, but I think I'm going to use my little inline sander. It's like an orbital inline sander. Let me get it here for you. I'm just going to do it outside. I'm not going to hook it up to the vacuum system, but this is a 6-inch inline sander that goes back and forth and also oscillates, so it does both. I think this might be a little bit better for, you know, getting this curve right here rather than trying to use just the DA sander. I think this is going to be a little bit of a, this already has a piece of 80 on it, still feels pretty sharp. So let me slide this outside and then I'll start sanding it down, show you what it's going to look like. Then I'll stop the video for a little bit because I'm not going to sit here and sand the whole thing on the video because that's going to probably take me 10-15 minutes to do. So let me just get set up and I'll show you how it's going to work, and then we'll go from there. So you can see it knocks it down pretty quick. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue to do this, come back after I get this sanded down so you can see what it looks like. Okay, most of it sanded out really straight, believe it or not, first coat. So I'm gonna mix up one more coat, put one more coat on, and then at that point we're gonna be ready for epoxy primer and 2K primer. I'm gonna show you something a little different here. I'm gonna do it a little bit differently because there are a few low spots, so I don't want to use just straight glazing putty. Okay, so I'm going to use this stuff and I'm going to mix it in with my Bondo. So basically what I am doing is creating a material that is half of this and half Bondo, and it's going to be a thinner material, not as thin as this but not as thick as the Bondo. It's going to be a in between, and what that's going to do is it's going to sand smoother. It's going to be less likely to have pinholes in it because of the glazing putty. Glazing putty does not pinhole up as bad as just straight body filler. So this is just another method you could do to thin your material out. You can also put fiberglass resin in your Bondo, body filler, Bondo, whatever you want to call it. But you could put that in there as well, and that will also make it a creamier, thinner mix. So you see I put about that much of that on there. This is a new container. And we're going to put about that much of that. And I'll just mix the two together with the same hardener. And it's just going to make it a thinner overall product. It's going to be thinner, easier to spread. It's going to be less likely to get pinholes. And it should sand a little bit easier as well. So I'm going to mix these two together and then I'm going to mix my hardener into it. I'm not going to show me spreading this onto the panel. It's going to be the same as I did yesterday, just a thinner coat of it. So I'm going to get this ready, get it spread on there, and then I'll be back in a little bit to show you what it looks like. And then I'll go ahead and sand it down again with my 80 grit, with my 6-inch sander, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, the Bondo is all spread out. It's a little bit lumpy. It started drying on me again. I can only do so much. But I'm going to go ahead and sand this down with 80 grit again with the same sander, come back and show you what it looks like. But I think this should be the last coat, and after that we should be ready to do some primering. Okay, it's pretty much sanded down with 80 grit, waiting for a couple little spots to dry, and then I'm going to hit it with 180, and then it's ready for primer. Now, a little quick tip. You have Bondo that falls into a hole, okay? And you got to clean those edges up. I use a deburring tool for deburring edges of metal, and I just carefully go in there and clean the Bondo out with it. See, now we got a perfect hole again. It's nice and cleaned out. We could take our 180 grit and sand around the edges to kind of radius it back into the hole. And that's all you got to do with it. Saves a ton of time, but you got to be careful. This isn't as bad because it's got a lip down the side. But if it's just sheet metal, you got to go very slow because you will eat into the sheet metal very quickly. So you got to be really careful with that. This I didn't worry about because I had this lip that bends over into the hole. So I'm going to go ahead and get this sanded down with 180, and then we're going to get it in the spray booth. We are going to put a coat of epoxy primer on it and then a couple coats of 2K, let it dry, and it'll be ready for tomorrow. Okay, I got the heater going. It's all blown off. I wiped it down with wax and grease remover. It's gonna get hot in here real quick. Right now it's 76 degrees in here, but it's 80 degrees outside, so it's not gonna take long for it to get up to 90 plus in there, because I just cranked it all the way, the heater, and said the heck with it, because I'm just gonna be putting this epoxy primer on, waiting 10 minutes, and then putting on the 2K primer. Now, I normally use Omni MP170 epoxy primer. I am trying the Speedy Coat epoxy primer. It is a DTM, direct to metal epoxy primer. This is gray in color. A bunch of people have told me to try this stuff and it works as good as the Omni. Whether it does or not, I don't know. I'll be the judge of it here today when I try it. I'll tell you what, it's about $80 a gallon cheaper. With the Omni though, you get a gallon of epoxy and 2 quarts of hardener, so it's a 2-to-1 mix. This is a 4-to-1 mix, so it's $80 cheaper, but you're also getting a quart less of material, so it's probably comparable to the price. This stuff you can order off of Amazon and have it in a day or two, or I got to go to the paint store and pick up the Omni. I had ordered this because I thought I was going to run out on a project, and it was the weekend and the paint store wasn't open, so I was like, man, I better have some sort of epoxy primer here in case I needed it. So that's why, another reason why I figured I would try it is because I needed it. So we're going to mix this up now. It's been stirring for about 10 minutes. It's a brand new gallon, so I wanted to really mix up. When I put the mixing lid on it, I had mixed it at that point in time as well. But stuff settles, you know what I mean? Every couple days, it's really going to kind of settle down. So we got to kind of keep remixing it. Now we're going to mix this 4-to-1, 4 parts epoxy primer, 1 part of hardener. I don't know if I'm going to put any reducer in it or not, because I don't know how thick this product is yet. I don't know if it's as thick as the Omni, if it's thicker than the Omni, or if it's thinner. So let's see what it pours out to be here. Okay, it's thinner. So we're not going to put any reducer in this. And we're only mixing up a little bit. We're only putting a light coat over the whole panel just to cover the bare metal, because the 2K primer that I use from Summit, which I like really well because it dries really good and it does not shrink back on me. I have no shrink back issues with this 2K primer from Summit. Now, the reason why I'm putting the epoxy primer down is because the Summit 2K primer is not direct to metal. You cannot put that on bare metal. They do not recommend it. I don't know if it causes corrosion or rust or what it does, but they just don't recommend it, so I don't do it. So that's why I put down an epoxy primer before the 2K primer, just to seal that metal off from the 2K primer, and also to seal that metal off, you know, from the elements and stuff. It helps seal everything off. But I'll tell you what, one thing about Speedy Coat is their products stink. They smell really bad. They're very potent smell. So That's just something you got to kind of get used to. You don't really smell it much with the spray booth on and your mask, but it's a lingering smell, and it's definitely a different smell than I'm used to smelling. I've used their paints before and had really good luck with their paint. So I figured, you know what, why not give this a try? I would say that Speedy Coat is probably equivalent to Omni, PPG Omni, or maybe Omni Plus, maybe in between the Omni and the DVC. I would say that this somewhere ranks in that level. I don't use a lot of high-end products usually. A lot of what I do are old cars, and they just don't really, in my opinion, I don't think they need the super high-end materials because they're just not driven enough. They're not used enough to warrant the money, but that's my opinion. You know, when I paint my own vehicles, I don't spend a lot of money on material. I buy the cheaper material, and my paint jobs have held up for a long, long time. So, I mean, it's just all in what you want and what you want to spend. If you have a big budget for paint, then go with the good stuff. I don't say it's bad by any means, but it's definitely very expensive. So let's go out there and put a coat of this on. I'm using a 1/3 tip for this. I'm using my base gun that I've been using for base and clear. This is the gun that I'm giving away on my giveaway video. This gun in a t-shirt. So make sure you guys go to that video. You're subscribed and you leave a message on that video. I plan on doing it on Sunday. So whoever's already messaged me, if nobody else messages me from now until Sunday on that particular video, you won't be entered to win a spray gun and a t-shirt. So keep that in mind. I think whoever wins this, who paints, is going to really like this for the value. So let's go out there. We're going to put a coat of this on. I'm using a 1/3 tip for the epoxy. My cup is leaking. Okay, we got a light coat on there. There's a couple drips. I'm not going to worry about it. The 2K primer's going to handle that. I put the lid on bad, so it must have rolled the liner on the one edge. Yeah, it didn't seal. See how this liner's pushed down on this one edge right there? So the cup didn't seal all the way, so it dripped everywhere, all over the floor and everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up this mess, get the gun cleaned and everything, and then we're going to mix up some 2K primer. It's only been about 5 minutes, but I'll tell you what, this stuff seems to be drying extremely fast. It's just barely sticky. So I bet you within 10 minutes it's going to be ready for the 2K primer. We got a couple drips, like I said, over here, which I'm not going to worry about. Those will sand out. Just let it dry. But as you can see, it's already up to 90 degrees in here from 75. So that's with the fan's going full speed. So it's cranking some heat because it's hot outside. So give me a couple minutes here. I'll get some 2K primer mixed up. We'll go put a couple good heavy coats on. All right, let's get the primer mixed up here. This is a 4-to-1 mix, and I put 20% reducer in it to thin it down because this stuff is really thick. And I take the strainer out of this lid. If you don't take the strainer out of the lid, if you're using these disposable cups, this 2K primer is going to clog this strainer and you're going to quit spraying partially through your primering. So since I take this strainer out, I really need to strain this product because there could be thick stuff in it. So I'm using a regular paper strainer and I strain it going into the cup. So at least I grab any of the big stuff that comes out. it takes a while for this 2K primer to make it through this screen on this strainer, because the strainer screen is a very fine screen. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, if I hold it up to the lens or not, but it's a very fine screen. And I have hundreds of these that I keep around. Some people say that I should use a strainer before I put it into here, but I don't really agree with that, because the holes on this strainer are the same size as the holes on that strainer, so I don't really understand what double straining it is really going to do for me. I don't think it's really going to make a big of a difference. I usually don't get problems with dirt coming out of the gun itself or anything like that, but you can see here how you can just peel this strainer out of here. But you know, so that's what some people say. I don't know. I mean, to each their own. You can do it. I mean, if you're worried about it and you want to double strain it, it's not going to hurt anything. I don't think it's necessary in my opinion, but everybody has their own theories and opinions, and you know, everybody's taught a different way to do things, and there's nothing wrong with double straining it by any means. I just personally don't feel that is necessary. I think this is going to be enough, more than enough primer to put good 2-3 heavy coats on that. Should have grabbed something to put this into. Well, I guess I'll use one of these good toilet towels. I got to get another roll of these pretty soon. I'm almost out. Okay. Oh, so far, what do I think about the epoxy primer? I think it dries fast, but it's also 90 degrees right now in there. So, I don't know, I mean, it's epoxy primer. If it does what it's supposed to do, it's going to work just like all the others, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to mix this first, and then I'm going to put some reducer in it and mix it again. Now, you can see how thick this stuff really is. It's hard to show right now because there's hardener on the top, but I'll show you here in a minute. I like to reduce it a little bit because it just thins it out a little bit. Yes, it does take away from its full build capacity. It's not going to build as thick per coat, but when you are spraying it with like a 1/7 or a 1/8 tip and it's coming out real grainy, in my opinion, it needs to be thinned, because then you're just doing more work sanding it. This probably isn't a really good test, but it's thick. Probably doesn't look thick coming off the stick, but it is. And I'm just going to kind of mix this until I like the feel of the consistency. But on here, there's a chart that'll give you a spot for 10%, 20%, or 4 to 1 to 1, depending on what you want to do. I kind of just go by feel. I can kind of tell how it feels right now, and this feels good to me. That to me feels good. So I'm going to go ahead and get this mixed up. We're going to go out there and get these couple coats of heavy. We're going to put them on heavy. Want to get this to build pretty good and dry. I put it on really heavy, so I'm going to let that set for 10 minutes and then we'll put another coat on. And it's a little bit over 90 in here now. It's about 92 degrees. perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than a bunch of holes in this thing and literally folding in half because it was that rusted. So I'm gonna let this set another 10 minutes. I'm gonna do another coat of primer because I have enough to do a third coat in my gun, so I might as well use it up. It's not gonna hurt anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. That was part 3 of fixing the valance for the 49 Studebaker. Tomorrow I am scheduled to go over to his house around noon, and hopefully it's all prepped and ready. We got to put a coat. We're going to use a coat of that Speedy Coat epoxy primer. We're going to lay that down as a sealer. We're probably going to do 3 coats of paint. It's a single stage satin. What the heck color is that? It's an orange. It's like a burnt orange color. So we're going to put probably 3 coats will cover that. It's a paint that he ordered. It's a paint that they sell on eBay. I think something restoration paint. I actually used it on that bar that I had painted. Same stuff, just in a satin finish, and it's single stage. Just like the bar was shiny single stage. And that's it. We are probably going to get some bugs and dirt in it. It's in the middle of his garage, same spot that I primered it in. I mean, you can only do so much, but we're just going to see how we can do, what kind of a paint job we can turn out using cheap materials in a garage with no spray booth or anything like that, and we're just going to see what we can produce out of the gun. Obviously we can't wet sand and buff it because it's satin finish, but hopefully you guys stay tuned in tomorrow evening to see that video. Like I said, I'm going there around noon. I really only expect it to take about an hour and a half, really. I mean, it's supposed to be in the 80s again tomorrow, so I'd say the sealer epoxy primer I'm going to use as a sealer is going to take probably 15 minutes to set up, and then it's probably going to be 15 to 20 minutes per coat between coats, so probably 2 hours I'm going to be there. I'm not going to film every little bit of it. I'll film when I get there, when I put the epoxy primer on, probably when I put the first coat of paint on, and then probably when I do the last coat of paint. So thanks for watching, everybody. Also keep in mind the 2011 Chevy Malibu. I got to fix those passenger doors that were smashed in. It was hit on the side. If you guys want to see how I'm going to fix that, make sure you come back this weekend. There'll be videos on that, probably one tomorrow night, Sunday and Monday. I hope to have it in the spray booth by Monday at the latest, but we'll see how that goes. I don't know how it's going to go once I pull the doors off, if the jams are screwed up or not, if I have to do a bunch of monkeying around to get the doors to line back up, but we'll get there. We'll figure it out when we get there. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you later.